right, so we'll have live callers on in just a minute, and I'll do my little introduction, and then I'll turn it right over to you for your opening comments, and just whenever you're done, turn it back to me, and we'll start doing Q&A.
Okay.
Hello, and welcome to our live telephone town hall meeting this evening. Thank you so much for being on the call with us. You're on a live teletown hall with your Illinois State Representative, Elaine Neckritz. She's here to answer your questions on any issues facing the state of Illinois. If you'd like to ask a question live in our forum, go ahead and push 0 on your phone right now or at any time during this call. We'll get you up to ask those questions live in our forum, and we'll have Elaine answer it for you. We'd also like to get you occasional email updates from Elaine's office. If you want to get signed up for that e-newsletter, please press 7 on your phone now or at any time during this call. I'll give you a last call a little bit later on when we've run out of time to take emails, and that'll be your last chance. So if you'd like to get email updates from Elaine's office, push 7. And again, push 0 to ask questions. I'm going to repeat this introduction just a couple more times. We're dialing out to thousands of your neighbors in the 57th District right now, and we appreciate your patience. We'll be joined in a moment by your Illinois State Representative, Elaine Neckritz, for a live telephone town hall meeting. She'll be answering your questions, and Q&A is really what drives these calls. So we'd like to take your questions on any issues facing the state of Illinois. So if you'd like to ask a question live, we encourage you to push 0 on your phone right now and get up to ask that question live in a little bit here. We'll hear some brief opening comments from Elaine, and then we'll get right to your questions. And we'll have a survey question for you as well. You'll be able to vote on your touch-tone phone. Once again, this is a live telephone town hall meeting. Welcome to it. Thanks for being on the call with us. Your Illinois State Representative, Elaine Neckritz, will be on the call with us shortly to answer your questions and take your comments. Now, if you'd like to ask a question live in this forum, we encourage you to press 0 on your phone right now. We'll get you up to ask your questions live in this forum. If you come up with a question later, go ahead and push 0 now, or 0 then, but the earlier you push 0, the better chance we'll have of getting to your question. So again, we'd like to take questions on any issues facing the state, and you do that by pushing 0. We'd also like to get you signed up if you're interested for occasional email updates from Representative Neckritz's office. If you'd like to get signed up for that e-newsletter, please press 7 on your phone now, and I'll give you a little reminder of that later. So again, please press 0 to ask a question live. We'll have a survey for you in a minute, and we'd like to get your email address, so push 7 for that. And with that, it's my pleasure to introduce your Illinois State Representative, Elaine Neckritz. Elaine, take it away.
Thank you, Ian. Well, welcome, everyone. I appreciate you joining in on this town hall meeting tonight and spending a portion of your evening discussing state issues. This is the first time I've tried something like this with a telephone town hall meeting, and I'm really interested in your thoughts on this method of communicating. So I'd appreciate it if you give me a call or shoot me an email with your reactions to this event. I want to leave plenty of time for questions, but thought I would start with a brief update on the state's finances since, to my mind, that is the most crucial issue facing state government right now. In its most recent statement on Illinois' fiscal situation, Moody's Investor Services, one of the rating agencies, acknowledged that, in fact, Illinois had made significant progress in recent years in addressing its fiscal problems. And I just want to give you a couple numbers to back that up. We are spending, in the current year's budget, $2.2 billion less in discretionary spending, things like education, human services, public safety, state police, corrections, those kinds of things, than we were 5 years ago. And cumulatively, over the last 5 years, we've cut over $5.7 billion in spending. To offset that, however, the pension payment has that we're obligated to make which I view as non-discretionary spending, has increased well in excess of $2 billion. And so that was why I worked very diligently on trying to pass some significant legislation to address the pension situation. We accomplished that last December, and that's now being challenged in the courts. One other item, the backlog of bills, which we might have heard a lot about, was almost $10 billion in November of 2010, and that has been reduced by 43%. So I know that's still a very big number. It's over $4 billion, but a standard 30-day payment cycle for our $35 billion annual budget is $2.2 billion. So we're somewhere between a 30 and 60-day payment cycle right now. With that being said, I don't mean to imply that our situation is rosy in the state of Illinois or that our need for fiscal discipline and hard decisions is by any means behind us. We still have a lot of challenges ahead, and we've got to tackle them head on. So with that, Ian, I'm going to turn it back over to you for questions.
Sure thing. We've got a few in line already. We're going to take Bill in a moment here, but a reminder that if you'd like to ask a question of your representative, Elaine Mekritz, in this forum, push 0 on your phone right now. We'll get you up to ask that question live. And we're going to go ahead and do a survey question first. You can vote in this survey using your touch-tone phone. So we want to know, what is the most important issue for the state legislature to focus on? Press 1 if you think it's education funding. Press 2 if you think it's human services funding. Press 3 if you think it's infrastructure funding. Press 4 if you think it's a tax rate. And press 5 if you think it's jobs. I'll repeat that one more time. What is the most important issue for the state legislature to focus on? Press 1 on your phone for education funding, 2 for human services funding, 3 for infrastructure funding, 4 for the tax rate, and 5 for jobs. And we really appreciate your participation there. Again, press 0 if you'd like to ask a question. If you'd like the occasional email updates from Elaine's office, press 7 and we'll get you with an operator and get your email address so we can get you updated via that e-newsletter. Our first question is going to come from Bill. Bill, you're live with Elaine Mekritz. Go ahead.
Hi. I was wondering what your position is on the extension of 355 or 53 going north into Lake County off of Lake Cook Road.
Well, thanks, Bill. I have been the victim of the crowded traffic on Dundee and Lake Cook in Buffalo Grove and Wheeling and over into Palatine, as so many of the constituents in the 57th district have. So I think that that's something that we need to be doing. I think it's a challenge, though, to find the resources to do it, and there has been a Blue Ribbon Task Force that's been working on that and trying to not only find a route for it and to finalize some of the details around that, but also to put together a plan for financing it. The federal government is really, the Highway Trust Fund is about to run out of money, and that's been the historic source for funding for major road projects like this. So we're going to have to be a little bit more creative than that on a project like that. I am planning on having a town hall meeting later on this fall on exactly that topic, and so we would welcome your participation in that. We'll get that information out as to when and where. We don't have all that nailed down yet.
All right. Thank you very much, and thanks, Bill, for that question. We're going to go back to your live questions in a moment. We've got some email questions that we'd like to cover as well. The next question we have for you, Elaine, is what bills did you pass this year? Can you cover that before we get back to live Q&A?
Sure. The Des Plaines River runs through the district that I have the good fortune of representing, and so flooding, overbank flooding, it remains a persistent problem. So one of the things that I worked on this year was with the Stormwater Authority in Cook County, the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District, to allow them to buy out homes that repeat flood, rather than trying to raise those, to fight the floods by raising the homes or building levees or doing more expensive infrastructure relief for that. It's better in a lot of ways to just buy those it's cheaper and better to just buy those properties out and return the property to its natural state. So, but they needed some authority, some legislative authority to do that, and we gave them that. One of the other things that I worked on for the state's fiscal situation was to try to strengthen our rainy day fund. This is something that, again, the rating agencies look to when they're evaluating the health of a state's budget, and we have a very weak and lame, frankly, rainy day fund. So we're starting the process of stabilizing that and getting something more solid into place. So those are a couple of things that successfully worked on this year.
All right, thank you, Elaine. And a reminder, you can push 0 to ask a question, 7 to get email updates, and our next question is going to come live from Larry. Larry, you're live. Go ahead. Larry, are you there?
I'm here, but I don't remember my exact phraseology. You've got it. You use it.
Sure. Our operator summarized your question as what can be done to get the legislature to actually care for the pension problem. Is that about right, Larry?
Sounds good, yes.
Okay. Elaine?
Okay. Well, I don't know which side you're coming from on that, Larry, because some people think that I care if I do nothing, and those are many times the people that are going to be relying on that pension, and some people care that we want to try to bring the cost of that under control. I've been on the side of that, of trying to bring those costs into line. Right now, we're spending 22 cents of every tax dollar toward the pension payment. And most states are averaging around 5 cents of every tax dollar that's devoted to their public employee pensions. So in order to preserve funding for education and higher education and so many other things that the state addresses, I felt it was important to try to do that. So we took a very significant step, passed some legislation last December, and the governor signed it almost immediately. It will bring down that 22 cents and flatten out the trajectory on projected increases on that as well. But as we expected, some of the public employee unions have filed a lawsuit challenging the constitutionality of that legislation, and right now we are awaiting action by the courts to determine whether they will approve what the legislature actually did.
Got it. Thank you, Larry. Appreciate you being on.
Thanks,
and thank you, Elaine. We're going to go to Christine's question live next. If you'd like to ask a question, again, push 0. Christine, you're up. Go ahead.
Hi, Elaine. I think we know each other, and I think you know my stance on this situation. The question is about the gun violence, the issue of conceal and carry in our state, and instead of going and restricting more after Sandy Hook, I mean the gun violence has gone on and has proven that more guns on the street just don't really reduce gun violence. So my question is the state going to look, or is the legislature ever going to look seriously at bringing up conceal and carry again, and try to curb what we have on the books right now, or at least strengthen our gun laws?
Well, as you know, I voted against the conceal and carry legislation that was adopted a year ago, last May, but the legislature was actually forced into making a decision on that by the federal courts, who told us that our then existing law, which said that we did not allow anyone to conceal and carry, was unconstitutional and violated the Second Amendment, and we had, I forget what the time frame was, we had about 5 or 6 months to adopt a conceal and carry proposal, which is, again, so the legislature did that. Again, that was something I voted against because I thought it went too far. I think that there will be probably dozens and dozens of pieces of legislation filed on each side, whether you want to see the conceal and carry more restricted or whether you want to see it expanded. I think that there will be, there already was this year lots of legislation filed, and I think we'll see more in the future. None of that legislation moved this year because I think it was the legislature's feeling that we needed to let the law just went into effect. People just started getting their conceal and carry permits in March, I think it was, and so I think we wanted to see how that went into effect before we actually started tinkering with it. But I do think you will see some efforts to, on both sides to address what people see as flaws in the law.
Great. Thank you, Elaine. Thanks, Christine. Appreciate you being on the call. We're going to go to Robin's question live next. But another reminder, if you'd like to get email updates on these topics and other important topics facing the state, please press 7. We'll get you up with an operator and make sure we get you that e-newsletter. So 7 for email updates. And our next question is going to come from Robin. Robin, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Go ahead. You're live.
I wanted to know how Elaine feels about supporting more programs for adults and children with disabilities and special needs, and how you also feel on mental health.
Thank you very much for your question. This is an area where the state's fiscal situation has had a dramatic and, to my mind, negative effect on our ability to fund services for the disabled and for the mentally ill. I think with the implementation of the Affordable Care Act, there will be that will help us find more resources to support a lot of those programs with some funding from the federal government for a lot of individuals who were not previously eligible for Medicaid. But I have worked really hard to try to make sure that there are community-based services, both for the the disabled and for the mentally ill, and to really rebalance a lot of the way we spend our money from, to my mind, an over-reliance on institutional care to more supports in the community. And I think that's where we need to be focusing our efforts. And frankly, if we are able to rebalance, we don't need a lot of new resources. We just need to shift them from where they're currently focused. And that's something that I've tried to focus on as a member of the legislature.
Thanks so much, Robin, for the question. Thank you, Elaine, for the answer. We have another Elaine from our audience to ask her next question. Elaine, you're up. Go ahead.
Me? My question was for where the money is going from all these lottos and everything that they originally introduced to say was for education. They keep talking about all the money they need to educate, and meanwhile people are spending billions on these lottos and everything. And where's that money going? What are they using it for?
Okay, and Elaine, it's nice to hear from another Elaine. When we instituted the lottery back in the 70s, and even though I've been in the legislature 12 years, that was well in advance of when I got there. There was a bit of a shell game played. It was, and so what the money does go toward education, and it does go into an education fund. But back in the 70s, when they instituted this, they simply then supplemented education and increased spending on everything else, but with the money that they then took from the education fund. Right now, we get about $600 million a year from the lottery, from the casinos, and so forth, and we're spending, I believe, somewhere between $8 and $9 billion with a B on education. So the lottery money does go into that, but at this point, it is not a panacea or any kind of significant solution for funding education.
Great. Thank you very much, Elaine. And thank you, Elaine, for your answer. We're going to go to our next question from Judy. But one last reminder, if you'd like to ask your representative, Elaine Neckrits, a question, push 0 on your phone right now. We'll get to as many of you as we can in the time we have. And if you'd like to get email updates from her office, press 7, and we'll make sure we get you that e-newsletter moving forward. All right, Judy, you're live. Go ahead.
Yes, Elaine, I was wondering how you feel about term limits for legislators, and also how you feel about, answer that question first.
Sure. A lot of our surrounding Midwestern states have term limits and have, I think, experienced not very positive results from term limits because of the lack of institutional knowledge and experience and history. The folks who end up with that with that institutional knowledge and with the experience in those legislatures end up being the lobbyists and the staff who don't. I recognize that people think that legislators are not accountable to voters, but I would argue that lobbyists and staff are even less accountable to voters than legislators. So the term limits have not, I think, had the desired effect of making legislators more accountable to voters. And
can I interject something there?
Yes, sure.
All right, I'm interjecting, but with a Mike Madigan, and supposedly you are his point person, which shocked me when I read that in the paper. I think that maybe the power has been shifted to too much power.
And I certainly don't argue that he has been there too long a time. What I would support is that this has been tried in the Illinois General Assembly, and unfortunately one of the caucuses instituted term limits for their leaders. which I think would be a good way, because every organization needs turnover and needs some new blood and new ideas. And I think term limits for the leaders would be a good solution for that, without turning over legislators too quickly. I also, if a lot of states have made the term limits like 6 years or 8 years, I think if they were to look at something a little bit longer than that I would consider that as well. But this job is like a lot of jobs. It takes a while to figure out, how to do it and how to work within the system to be effective within the system. And the place where I'm his point person, let me just add this. The place where I'm his point person is on pensions, and actually that was legislation and an area where I worked with Senator Daniel Biss of Evanston to come up with a proposal that then we took to the Speaker. He didn't dictate it to us, and so these were our ideas and the things that rank and file. It actually was caused quite a stir in the Capitol when rank-and-file legislators came up with a solution that leadership had not been able for a problem that leadership had not been able to fix.
All right, thank you, Elaine, and thank you so much, Judy, for being on and asking your question. We're going to go right to Joe's question next. Joe, you're up.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for calling this evening and giving me the chance to speak. My question was, I just came back from Washington, D.C., and I did the Capitol tour and everything, and I had a really great time. What I was wondering was, I don't know if you're aware, but we see a lot of ads on TV about natural gas and how an important role it has played in our country as far as our economy. And I noticed that businesses are embracing it, but I noticed the government is very slow to embrace it, or at least in our state of Illinois, they're slow to embrace it. And I've seen states like Utah where these people they're using natural gas in their vehicles, and car manufacturers are starting to make brand new trucks and stuff for businesses. And I thought Illinois could save billions of dollars, because natural gas could be as cheap as 60 cents a gallon out of your house versus what these guys are spending. Although it's interesting, out on the East Coast, $4 is what they're charging, just like at a regular pump for natural gas out there. But you talk about gouging. But it's like I took the opportunity to buy a government vehicle, and I've saved $5,000 in 2 years with about 40,000 miles on the car. And I thought, why can't the state embrace the lead like Utah has done, and use this technology and reduce our expenses as far as fuel cost, and make it mandatory for government use. And I mean, it could be adapted in passenger cars. It's very adapted in trucks and pickups for like government local businesses.
So Joe, let me just, I'm sorry if I can.
Sure.
It is the kind of thing that we have. I think if you see the PACE buses and the CTA buses around, there are a number of them that are powered by natural gas. It's also an area where in electricity generation, that we have the power generators have been moving in that direction, not because of anything that the state government has or hasn't done, but because just simply it's inexpensive to operate a power plant with natural gas, because it's so inexpensive right now. I'd like your idea, and I will check in to see what Utah has done and see if we can adopt some of those policies in Illinois. And I'll just leave you with one last item. I did sponsor some legislation this spring to try to have compressed natural gas and liquefied natural gas taxed on a diesel gallon equivalent, which was a new phrase that I learned, to diesel, so that we could encourage the development of liquefied natural gas and compressed natural gas for long-haul trucks and for diesel trucks in the state of Illinois. We didn't quite get that through, but I'm going to be continuing to push on that in future legislative sessions, because that would help spur that in the private sector and the use of natural gas in the private sector as well.
All right. Thank you, Joe. Really appreciate the question and your comments. Yeah. And we're going to go to our next question from John. John, you're up.
Yes, Elaine, good afternoon or good evening, and
Hi, John.
Kind of a cool night. I'm a senior citizen, and I'm wondering about the real estate tax that I have to pay on my house that keeps going up, and my value of my house keeps going down. And yet I see people in big shots in Cook County getting big rebates. I don't quite understand that.
Well, I'm not sure that I can explain that to you either. The state doesn't collect any of that property tax. That all stays with your local schools and municipal library and park districts. But we do have and back in the mid 1990s we did adopt the legislature did a tax cap so that the amount that any one of those local governments, the additional amount that any one of those local governments can ask for in any given year is limited by the increase in the consumer price index. One of the issues with the real estate taxes is from a policy perspective, it's a very stable source of revenue, but it's not tied to ability to pay, and so when it's not tied necessarily to the value of your home relative to the amount that's taxed. It's tied to the value of your home relative to everybody else's home and everybody else's property. So when those big tax breaks are given, that tax then gets spread to everybody else in the county, and it's something that we've looked at in the state in trying to provide relief for homeowners, and we've done some of that in the past. We had a major screw up, frankly, when we instituted a program that would protect those whose values were rising very quickly, and then when the real estate bust hit and values went down, those people got hit the hardest. So I'm not always sure that we're really good at designing programs that take account of increasing markets and decreasing markets. But it's a very thorny question, and again, the increase in the taxes is capped, but if with a lot of foreclosures and things, it's really impacted those people who have continued to have to pay those taxes.
All right, thanks, Elaine. Thank you, John, for the question. And our next question is going to come from Greg, but he doesn't want to ask it live, so I'm going to ask it for him. Before I take Greg's question, I'm going to have a last call here for anybody who'd like to ask a question. Go ahead and push 0 on your phone now if you'd like to ask a question. We'll try to get as many of you in before our time runs out here. And last call for email addresses as well. So if you'd like to get email updates on these topics and others from Elaine's office, go ahead and push 7 on your phone now. So 0 for questions, 7 if you'd like to give us your email address. And Greg's question is, what have you done to improve the state's fiscal condition? Elaine?
Well, as everyone knows, it's been a real challenge. Again, one of the most significant things that I've worked on is the question of the state pensions, as our required payments have increased dramatically. It's really put a lot of pressure on the other state needs and core state services, and so getting that legislation passed was very significant. I also was the author and the architect of a state spending cap that we put into place back in January of 2011, and that was designed so that if we were, I would say, even on a little bit of a spending spree at that point, and this would have said if we were overspending, that the increase in the income tax would automatically roll back as a matter of law, and that spending cap that we wrote into the law has led to the practice that the state has now and this is not rocket science, and it's the kind of thing we should have been doing all along, but we weren't, of setting a revenue estimate that was legitimate and was signed, sealed, and delivered by our revenue forecasting arm of the General Assembly that both Democrats and Republicans trust. So we rely on their revenue estimate. We set that, and we don't, and we appropriate and spend tax dollars only to that number. And that's really what's led us over the last several years to bringing down the backlog of bills, getting our spending in line, and being in a position where, as I said at the start of the call, where Moody's has said that we actually did make some significant progress in the last couple of years. So I'm pretty proud of the work that I've done on the fiscal side of things to rein things in and to make sure we're balancing the checkbook.
All right. Thank you, Elaine. Our next question is going to come live from Jordan. Jordan, you're live on the line. Go ahead.
Hello, Congresswoman Neckritz. Thank you for having this forum.
Elaine does just fine.
Okay. Thank you, Elaine. My question is regarding House Bill 5708 to remove...
tell me what that is.
Okay. To remove the misdemeanor for possessing cannabis. Do you support that bill?
I think we are. Some of that will depend on the details of it, and I don't mean to nitpick on it. I do think that we have too many low-level drug offenders in our prison system, and we need to try to, for fiscal reasons, get the situation in our state prisons under control. And a lot of the cities around the country have moved to the kind of thing you're talking that I think this bill would provide for, which is rather than sending someone to jail for for small amounts of possession of marijuana, imposing a fine on them. I'm open to it, but there's several different versions of this legislation out there, and I would want to see how the details work out before I would actually commit.
Great. Thank you, Elaine. Thank you, Jordan. Appreciate your question. We're going to go to our next live caller. It's Karen. Karen, you're up.
Hi,
Go ahead.
Elaine.
Hi, Karen.
I was calling because I was wondering what was going on with the Condominium Ombudsman Act. The bill had gone in. I was in court recently and sat with a friend who had a problem at her condo association, and this judge had an entire morning taken up with condominium disputes.
Yes. Yeah.
How many mornings does that happen? How many days? How many judges do we have being referees for condo disputes?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know, but I hear from folks all over the Chicago metropolitan area. Since I introduced this bill, I hear from folks all over the area who are having issues with their board. And really, the only way for an owner, a unit owner, to address that with a recalcitrant board is to go to court. And that's oftentimes not a viable remedy for someone who doesn't have the resources and the time to hire a lawyer and go to court. So as you noted, I did file legislation to create a position within state government for someone to actually try to mediate those disputes rather than have them go to court. I filed that legislation, I think, for either 6 or 7 years running, and this year we actually got it through the House, and it passed the House, but it did not pass in the Senate. So that's a challenge that's my next challenge, is to try to educate senators on the need for this and to get them to say yes, as the House said yes.
All right, great. Thank you very much, Karen. Thank you very much, Elaine, for the answer. Adrian is our next caller. Adrian,
Hello.
You're up. Go ahead.
Hi, Elaine. It's Adrian.
Hi, Adrian. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Good.
So my question has to do with your bill about shrinking the number of governments we have in the state, which I think is a great idea. How can we shrink them, and do you have an idea of which ones will get shrunk first or get rid of first?
Well, I have my own thoughts on that, and I haven't filed anything yet, Adrian, because we're still trying to work through what that process would look like. And frankly, I feel like every time I turn over another stone on this, the issue gets even more complex. We've in the past, the legislature has tried to do this with school districts and with townships, and politically, that's proven to be impossible. It hasn't happened, even though we have 880 school districts in the state of Illinois, and I don't even know how many townships. But we have a lot of very small units of government, some of which don't even have elected boards. They're appointed boards, and they're lighting districts, they're sanitary districts, they're little water districts, and those are the kinds of things I think where we have other units of government that are in place that actually do that work, and so there really is duplication. And so, to my mind, those are places where we can start. Now, there's complexities of like, well, if the people being served by that unit of government, if there's debt in that unit of government, who picks that up? Does it continue to be paid by the people who are currently being served, or if we merge that into a larger unit of government, does the larger unit of government pick up that debt? And so it's those kinds of questions that are going to require a little bit of time to work through. But I think this is an area where there is a lot of duplication and a lot of administrative costs that we don't need to be burdened with. And so I'm committed to seeing it through. But it's going to take some time to build an appropriate solution for all these units of government. Thanks, Adrian.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that question. And thank you, Elaine, for the answer. Next question is going to be Vicki. Vicki, you're up live. Go ahead.
Great. Hi, Elaine.
Hi, Vicki.
I've got a question. I heard about a group called Yes for Independent Maps. Mm-hmm. They have an issue about the partisan gerrymandering of voting districts, and they're talking about adding something onto the ballot for voters to decide if we should transfer power to an independent commission that legislates the voting districts. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that we could certainly do our redistricting on a less partisan basis. I think that's a very laudable and worthwhile goal to be looking at. I have two general concerns, and I'm not an expert in the Yes for Independent Maps legislation. I'll be learning about it with you, and if it gets on the ballot, we'll all be learning about it to vote yes or no on it. I have two concerns. One is the commission that's appointed by this is going to be appointed by somebody, and I think if you look around the country where this has happened, there's still a partisan bent to that appointment. So I just want to be sure that people recognize that we're not going to get out. We're not going to avoid partisanship altogether. And the second thing is, a lot of people point to Iowa as a model of how redistricting can be done on a less partisan basis, and I don't think Iowa is a fair model for us to be looking at because it's a very homogeneous state. They have very small minority populations, and the Federal Voting Rights Act dictates that in states like Illinois that have large minority populations, when we start drawing districts, we must start with the minority districts to make sure that there's minority representation. That makes our redistricting a lot more complex than a state like Iowa. I'll be interested. I know there's a lot of back and forth right now in the media on whether the Yes to Independent Maps will make it onto the ballot, and I think that there's I think there's a lot of confusion, frankly, I see in the reporting on that issue. But I know that the State Board of Elections is working their way through that and to see whether there was the requisite number of valid signatures that were collected in order to get that on the ballot.
Great. Thank you very much, Vicki. And Elaine, thank you for that answer. And we've actually run out of time. For those few folks that are still left in the queue that didn't get a chance to ask your question, if you feel like you didn't get your question answered, or anybody out there who'd like to leave us a comment, when we close out this call in just a couple minutes, you'll have an opportunity to leave us a voicemail message just by staying on the line. So stay on the line if you'd like to leave Elaine a voicemail message. And with that, I'll turn it over to Elaine for some closing comments. Go ahead.
Well, thank you very much. Again, this is the first time we've done this, so I'd be interested in everybody's feedback on how you enjoyed it or didn't enjoy it, as the case may be, and whether this was worthwhile. I would just encourage everyone, if you've to visit our website. And if you just Google me rather than me trying to give you the web address, because it's repnecritz, repnecritz.org, or you can just Google it, and you can also then sign up for our email list at that as well. I do read every email that comes into the office, and if you call and ask to speak with me, I do try to return all those calls. Because I do want to hear everyone's comments and get everyone's input. That makes me a better representative and a better legislator when the more people I hear from. So again, I appreciate everybody's participation tonight, and have a good evening.